And welcome inside this edition of Big Ten Today. Rick Pizzo, Dave Wanstead, Howard Griffith. You know, Wani, you're normally surrounded by Dave Revson on this side, Joshua Perry on the other side. You're welcome for having a better-looking, much younger duo to flank you today.
Well, and I'm going to thank you for that, okay? I want to see what kind of information I get out of these guys.
Fair enough.
Joshua and Rev, they cover me pretty good. You know?
Okay, all right. Well, we're going to have to put it to the test. We're going to see.
I'm ready.
Meanwhile, Joshua's like, okay, you guys can talk about better looking and subjective stuff. The whole younger part?
Yeah.
No. I win no matter what you all think. All right, here we go, Wani. Test number one. Let's get into today's big story, and it is what I am calling Statement Saturday, not just because 3 of the 4 teams involved in the 2 marquee matchups have state as part of their name, Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan State, but also very important game for Illinois. We'll get into the Illini and their race to capture the West as you look at the entire Big Ten Week 9 schedule. All of these games coming on Saturday. You can see that Rutgers-Minnesota game, 2:30 Eastern, 1:30 Central, right here on Big Ten Network. We begin with Ohio State, Penn State. Howard, I think it's funny. I think it's very telling that there are folks asking, what's wrong with Ohio State's offense? Because the Buckeyes had to kick 4 field goals.
Yeah.
They score 54 against an Iowa defense that most people consider one of the best in the country. And we're wondering why they weren't at their best.
And you're also wondering why they couldn't run the ball. They were struggling to run it as well. But this is good. This is going to happen when you play a team like Iowa. To me, you talk about that front 7. Those guys are fundamentally sound. Talking about Iowa's defense, They're going to cause problems for you. They know that Ohio State wants to run the ball, and they really played well and played up to that competition level early. And the fact that Ohio State had to kick field goals, I mean, that's just part of the deal. Sometimes you're going to have to do that. Sometimes you're going to have to win ugly. And they had to do it early, settling for those field goals. But that's something that they can work on, continue to work on, because now they can see some fronts, see some different looks, and try to adapt their game to make sure that they can do a better job of following.
You know, you're right. They had to kick field goals, but there's a lot of teams that don't even kick field goals.
And they made the field goals, which is an important aspect of kicking the field goal.
They're the only team in the FBS that has scored every time they've gotten in the red zone. Nobody else has done that this year. Somebody was talking about that this morning, and you know, when you have a great team like Ohio State has, you know, as a head coach, you know, you don't take anything away from Iowa. Iowa's 14th in the nation in stopping the run. So we knew that they were going to do that well. But I think getting in these situations, you know that down the road, sooner or later, I'm going to be in a situation where we're going to have to make a field goal. We're going to be in a 2-minute drill. We're going to be coming off the goal line. All the different situations that happen during the course of a season, and they show up sometimes not until you're playing top competitions or get into the college football playoff or whatever. So I think this stuff was good for Ohio State. I think it gave Ryan Day an opportunity to be in some situations from a coach's standpoint and also from a player standpoint. We're down here. We're going to have to kick a field goal. We didn't score a touchdown. I mean, that was a little bit different. As crazy as it sounds.
And they're still doing all this without Jackson Smith and Jigba, who played, but we saw a couple of clips late. He's just not himself. They're trying to do this with a really good wide receiving core, but without one of the best wide receivers in the country. And I think because their offense is so good and there are so many stars, we don't talk enough about what Jim Knowles has done. Sure, Iowa's offense has struggled against everybody, but Ohio State's in the backfield. They're forcing turnovers. And at the end of the day, whether it's against Penn State, whether it's against Michigan, whether it's in the Big Ten championship game or the college football playoff, this defense is going to be called upon to do things it hasn't been able to do in the last few years. And I feel, Dave, like right now, they're more prepared to do those things than they have been the last couple of seasons.
Oh, without a doubt. And, you know, when we can, right now they're second in the nation in yards given up. I remember the first week, and Ryan Day everybody consensus was, okay, if Jim Knowles can come in and just have a good defense. I think Howard said it. We don't have to be great. And I think they're playing, you know, outstanding football, big-time football on all 3 levels of that defense. This is going to be a great test for them. If I'm Jim Knowles, I'm looking forward to this game coming up because, you know, last week, you know, they're kind of one-dimensional team last week, right, with Iowa. Well, this week now all of a sudden, boy, Penn State can make plays, running it, throwing it. So this is a good challenge, but I think it's motivating. If I'm him, I'm looking forward to this matchup.
I think one of the areas where they have to continue to improve, and they will, and I watched Zach Harrison have a career day from a defensive tackle position, a defensive end position. This is a type, he played the way we thought he would play when he walked in the door at Ohio State.
Every Saturday we thought.
Every Saturday. So I'm not saying that the competition was part of it, because they probably had a little something to do with it. But to me, the confidence that he now has put something on tape where now he's not just dominant just once a game, once every 3 games. He was dominant on every play, it seemed like. Every time you turned on the tape, he was in the backfield. He was making plays bubble. He was rushing the quarterback. They're continuing to gain that confidence that they all need. This linebacker group is playing some of the best football they've played in the last couple of years. Now, yeah, the names have changed, but before we watched these guys play, it looked like they were stuck in mud a lot of times. Now you don't have that issue right now. They're doing a really good job, and they're healthy. And Michael Hall Jr., that dude there, when he's in the middle, he's a dude. He's a dude. You can't block him one-on-one. You attempt to block him one-on-one, he's going to spend the rest of the day in the backfield.
I like the fact you're talking about confidence. I think confidence is a buzzword for Penn State. It had to be shaken after the game against Michigan. And then against Minnesota, you're under the lights. Yeah. You're at home. It's a whiteout. You're playing a backup quarterback. You have to win, and you have to win convincingly. They did that. And Howard, to me, the way Sean Clifford played maybe changes something for this team in the second half of the season offensively, because he looked like a quarterback that had confidence. That was not the case against Michigan.
Yeah, he looked really confident in this game, and he was able to make some throws, scramble around, put the ball up for some of his playmakers on the outside to come up with big plays. And that's a good thing, because he can also pull it down and run. So he'll stress this Ohio State defense in situations, but he also has to stay within the confines of that system. He's got to be able to do that, but they have to be able to run the ball. The challenge I see when you talk about them going up against Ohio State, Coach, is the fact when we look at the Michigan tape, it was such a dominant performance in the trenches. Yep. The line of scrimmage was owned by Michigan. That is what Ohio State is going to attempt to do. They're going to come out and they're going to duplicate that. Is Penn State right now built to handle that? Because they weren't when they played Michigan. Can they figure out a way to gain that confidence where they now all of a sudden can not control it, but be able to feel good about what they're doing up front on both sides? Because they're going to need line play to make this game.
Well, you have to think Ohio State and Jim Knowles, they're going to start with 7, 8 guys, maybe 9 sometimes in the box, and say, Nick Singleton, Katron Allen aren't going to beat us. Sean Clifford, you want to try to beat us on the edges? Try to beat us on the edges, because we feel like we can get to you and cause disruption before you throw the ball.
Yeah, you mentioned, Sean Clifford. I was glad to see James Franklin after the game come out and compliment him and talk to him, because I personally think over the last 3 or 4 years, Penn State's offense goes as Sean Clifford goes. And I really believe that, his ability to run, I wouldn't be surprised this week if we don't see a little bit more, called quarterback runs in the game, because, I can't get this thought out of my mind. And I was there in person working the game when Ohio State in 2017, they were behind. Penn State had a 5-point lead with Saquon Barkley, and 4 minutes to go in the game, and all they had to do was make a first down. Yeah. And they couldn't, and they punted the ball, and Ohio State went down and scored. So I agree. I think we're all saying the same thing. Trenches, you got to be able to run the ball some, and going back to Sean Clifford, that's where he could really help you. A quarterback designed run could be a nice additive to this game to make them have some first downs running the ball.
Yeah, if they can stay in 3rd and 5 or less, 5 or less, that all of a sudden, and you call a pass play, now Sean Clifford, he get outside of contain. He wants to scramble, has the ability to do that. He's always going to be looking downfield. But that threat, right, the threat of him being able to run and pick up the first down with his legs becomes a big possibility for them to do that.
All right, so what about the aspect of Penn State's defense trying to do what no defense has done this year and slow down Ohio State? They've had some terrific games under first-year DC Manny Diaz, and I think they are playing the way that Diaz wants them to play, straight downhill, very aggressive, opportunistic, looking for turnovers. The trouble is, when you play that way against an offense that has the kind of weapons that they have and the play-calling ability of Ryan Day to put defenses in conflict, I'm not so sure, Dave, and you have a great lengthy defensive background, I'm not so sure that's the right mix that you want out there against this Ohio State personnel.
Yeah, my thought, if if I'm going to try to defend this Ohio State offense, I'm going to do everything I can to stop them with 7 guys up front. You know, I'm not going to get into. I'm going to do everything I can to stay away from a single high, single coverage.
You're not corner blitzing.
No, I'm going to play either quarters or 2 or something and just tell the front guys that we have to be able to contain this run, and then don't panic, Penn State. Here's the catch. Whenever they clip off a 6 or 7 or 8 yard run, Ohio State on offense, don't panic right there. Make them go the long, hard way.
You can live with 6, 7, or 8. You can't live with 68.
Exactly. And to me, that's the real key in this thing. Defense. You know, if you're defending an offense like Ohio State.
So I think they go back, and Penn State has to really study, and I'm sure they have obviously, but they go back and look at the way Notre Dame played them, right? Not giving up the big play. You can have everything you want underneath, but we're not going to give up the big play.
Yep.
And if they have to kick field goals, they kick field goals. The challenge becomes, though, right? The challenge is it is going to be some matchup problems when you talk about the way the game can be called. Ryan Day can run 3 tights out there, so he can, what we would call U personnel. Yep. You get big, he can do that. He can then turn around and go 4 wides and spread you out. Oh, by the way, we'll go 2 backs.
If both those guys are healthy, Mayan Williams and Travion Henderson in the backfield.
It's already on tape the different ways they can win football games. So you're sitting there as a defensive coordinator and you're saying, what do I stop first? Right. Well, you're hoping you can stop maybe their top 2 plays and force them to go to some plays that maybe you haven't seen a lot and be able to have some success with those. But if you can't stop their top 2 plays, their runs and their passes, it becomes a long day.
Yeah. And the takeaways, too. You know, Penn State, they have 14 takeaways for the season. I mean, they're doing a great job of taking the football away defensively. Usually takeaways come from being aggressive. So there's a fine line for Manny Diaz, the coordinator. How aggressive do we want to be? We want to get the ball and make it easier for our offense, but yet at the same time, we don't want to give up.
I think every DC would agree. A lot more questions and answers when you face Ohio State.
The sneaky, good matchups in this game is the secondary.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Joey Porter Jr. is one of the best corners in the country. He's going to have an opportunity to line up against Marvin Harrison Jr., one of the best wide receivers in the country. There are going to be opportunities. There are going to be plays that this secondary is going to have a chance to make. This is a really talented secondary. You mentioned it, taking the ball away. But there's some matchups in the passing game that are going to be really fascinating to watch. And there are going to be a lot of pro scouts at this game.
I was just going to say,
watching those matchups.
A lot of talent on talent, a lot of future first-round draft picks
no doubt.
set to face off this weekend. Just a second road game, by the way, for Ohio State this year.
And Ohio State's going to have to defend everybody, too. I mean, you look at that Penn State, we know about the receivers, but how about the tight ends?
Yeah, good tight ends, good run game.
Their tight ends have come on, so there's a lot of weapons.
As I said,
on
a
both
lot
sides.
of talent on the field this weekend.
I think you just look back at the history of the rivalry, and from when it started, there's hatred between the 2 schools, and there's hatred between the players, the coaches, and the fans. I think the fans especially.
That's a tough team over there, no matter what type of crew they got.
Michigan State said we're tougher, we're more disciplined, we're gonna win this game.
We didn't put them away when we should have. We didn't put them away when we had the chance. That's really the biggest missed opportunity of last season.
We don't like them, we're not friendly with them, and so when that week rolls around every year, it's a big deal. This is what I came here for. This is my dream, to play at a place like this and play in a game like this. That one means more, and if you're saying that it's not, then you're lying to yourself.
Oh, I love it. We don't like them. They don't like us. Ohio State, Penn State may get some more eyeballs, but there's not the internal hatred in that matchup that there is in this one between the Wolverines and the Spartans. But let's start by talking about something that we like. And we like the way that Michigan is playing right now, Howard. They're playing complementary offensive football. We had questions about them defensively after the departure of Mike McDonald going back to the NFL. So far, they have answered every single question, and they have done it fluently.
Yeah, they've really done a great job. And you look at where they are, particularly on the defensive side. So many of those players are making huge plays, and it's just not one or two guys. They have everyone on that defense. They're making huge contributions to where they are right now. And Clinksdale, the secondary coach, who's also the co-defensive coordinator, you got to remember he was with the team last year. So he kind of has a great feel for what's going on in the secondary and how these guys need to respond. But they are doing everything just right, and they're managing what they need to do. And you can flip it to the offensive side. Again, J.J. McCarthy is continuing to grow as a passer and as a player. The more experience he gets, I think as we continue to move forward, we're going to see him be more part of that offense from a standpoint of pulling the ball down and running. We saw him contribute almost 60 yards to the run game the last time they were out a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, staying with JJ, my first thought for Jim from a coaching perspective this week, I'd send my coaches, you got a bye week, get them on the road, get them out of the office, because this is a week that could be dangerous from the standpoint of this. Don't get bored. Okay, coaches sit around, they got the chalk.
Paralysis by analysis.
Thank you. We could probably do this. Or, you know what, why don't we try this? Boy, Michigan State, they're at one of the big 13th, I think they are in the Big Ten passing. Let's try this play with JJ. I'm sure we can get open on this one. And pretty soon, you kind of get away from what has got you to this point. So that would be the first coaching thing. Jim, don't get bored this week. Keep doing what you're doing. Just try to improve on that. And you're going to have to add some stuff. Like, we know that JJ is going to be a runner at some point. Maybe this is the week. I don't know. Maybe they save it. We'll see.
These teams are so familiar with each other. There's no surprises really in this. They both know what they're going to get. I think for Michigan State, we did not know that they were going to show the kind of fortitude they showed against Wisconsin. They were mired in a big-time losing streak. They had injured guys. They were in a bad spot. They found a way to beat Wisconsin, and then like Michigan last week, they get a bye. This is a completely different team than the one we saw 3 weeks ago. But if they're going to challenge this Michigan defense, they need Peyton Thorne and Jaden Reed to be able to play the way they played in the past game a year ago, because I just don't think they're going to be able to run the football against this Michigan defense.
No, and Peyton, I love everything he's done. But 11 touchdowns and 7 interceptions, that's not good. You should be minimum 2-1. And right now he has struggled some. I hate to use the word game manager, but when you're running the ball like they did last year, he can manage the game and he can make some plays with his feet. He's a competitor.
Kenneth Walker ain't walking through that door this week.
And so that's a big hole in the thing. The first thought that came to my mind when we started talking about this game earlier today, Mark D'Antonio and special teams fakes. It just seemed like in these type of games,
got one ready.
It did happen a lot.
It happened a lot, whether it was Michigan, Ohio State, Notre Dame. This was always a game where, so if I'm Jim Harbaugh, and obviously Mel Tucker everybody's different, but this is a game that I'm really being a little bit cautious about situations like that where we don't want to turn the momentum and lose a play because of a fake punt, or a fake field goal or something like that. So that's special teams is going to be a bigger part of this game, I believe, than you think.
It always is, but let's be clear. The records, throw them out the window. I don't care.
Totally agree.
I don't care what Michigan State has played like earlier this year. It doesn't really matter. As you mentioned, we ran the clip earlier, the players, how they feel about this game. They're going to rise to the challenge. Michigan State, I expect them to go out and play the best football that they've played all year. Whether that's good enough to beat Michigan, we'll find out. But I expect them not to be creating turnovers or having turnovers and not to be a heavily penalized team. It's the little things that they have to make sure they execute in this game to make sure that they stay in it. Because that team on the other side, that team now in Michigan is a team that we talk about being able to win a college football championship. That's the kind of run I think that they're on right now.
And when you start to talk about numbers as they relate to Mel Tucker, everybody wants to talk about that massive contract. But there's a very important number that all Spartan fans know well.
Right.
He is 2-0 against Michigan. He's the first ever coach in the history of Spartan football to start with 2 consecutive wins over Michigan. That's why Howard, during his press conference on Monday, Jim Harbaugh made no bones about it. He said, this isn't a normal game. This isn't a normal game for our players. This isn't a normal game for me. I want to win this game badly. Our players want to win this game badly. I like that. I embrace that. If you're the coach of Michigan and it's this week or the Ohio State week, you admit it's different because everybody in the world knows that's the truth.
To me, that's where we've watched Jim really change as a coach. To me, I think he's doing some of the best coaching he's done in the last couple of years of how he's managing situations just like this. This game wasn't really important, I would say, to a lot of people on the Michigan side.
Even the Notre Dame game was more important. The Ohio State game was more important.
This wasn't important. But when you start to emphasize the impact and the importance of a game like this because of what's happened previously, you know you're going to be in for a fight. So it's about Jim being able to set the right tempo and send the right message. I talk all the time about talking the message that comes from the front of the room by the head coach or the coordinator, whoever it is. When you start to hear the players talk about it, that's when you know the guy at the front of the room has total buy-in from the players that are on the team.
And don't lose sight of the recruiting aspect of this too. You know, I mean, I don't know how many recruits will be at this game, but there'll be a ton of them, and they'll all be watching. And there are in-state recruits right now that are between, and a game like this can really do wonders. Michigan State is in there and upsets them and beats them.
Well, Mark D'Antonio changed that recruiting story a little bit, right? Because back then, when he took over, Michigan was the only school in that state that was really a national recruiter. Michigan State, because of its success against Michigan under the D'Antonio era, was able to go out and become something of a national recruiting power. And don't forget about this, Howard, because this plays into it as well. And this is hard to believe. 5 out of the last 7 games at the Big House, Michigan State has gone in there and they've won. There's a lot of pride. There's over 100,000 in there, and that sticks in the craw of Jim Harbaugh and this team. There's no doubt about it.
And it should, because we're going to run the clips all year.
That's right. Alumni are going to be talking about it all year.
We'll be showing the clip of Kirk Cousins at the press conference after for the rest of my life. Right? That's what we'll be seeing. Right? And Michigan players are seeing that too. They weren't on that team, but they understand.
They're reminded of it.
They're reminded, hey, here's what's at stake. And to me, that's why this has become such a fascinating game, because Michigan State has been able to raise the level of play and really be competitive in this game.
Absolutely.
Just like when you would take Pitt to West Virginia, right? Win in Morgantown, baby.
Coach, I'll tell you what, we weren't a very good team that year, but we beat them and upset them, and they were like number 2 in the country.
Yeah, you sent Ohio State to the national title game.
Yeah, and Les Miles, LSU to the championship game. We helped so many. I saved so many coaches' jobs on that one win. I shouldn't even mention that. Plus, there were 12 recruits on the sideline. We got 8 of them.
There you go.
This is great.
And the alumni talked about it all year. So we didn't have that good of a season, but that definitely, those rivalry games help a coach's resume.
Anytime that we can go back into the Wani time machine, get a Pitt reference, and for the first time this year, I get called coach by coach. It's a good Tuesday in the world of the Big Ten Network.
Jimmy Johnson quote's coming.
All right.
Okay, there's a team.
All right. Time for today's big stat. Eva Hudson of Purdue, freshman outside hitter, leads the Big Ten in kills per set, nearly 5 kills per set. The last freshman to lead the conference in kills per set, you have to go back to the very first year of the Big Ten Network era, and Illinois' Laura DeBruler all the way back in 2007. And with that, it is time for today's big interview. You may have guessed it. Eva Hudson of Purdue is joining us. Eva, you've made this transition look very easy. You were one of the top prep players in the country a year ago, but that transition is not easy, not when you're joining the best conference in the nation in women's volleyball. What's been the hardest part of the transition for you, either on or off the court?
I just think it's physicality. I mean, there are so many great players, and they've all been in the weight room, and it's just crazy coming in as a small freshman and trying to get around that big block. I think that's definitely an adjustment and something I've been working on off the court and on the court. So it's just cool to see that continue on the court.
How quickly were you able to get past that, something of an intimidation factor, I guess, when you're playing older players and bigger players? I mean, we're talking about players like Anna Smrek, the Final Four MVP a year ago, who's 6'8", and other players who you have to deal with. Mentally, how did you approach that as a freshman?
It's definitely intimidating, but just my team. My team came in and they welcomed me, and I think we have such great chemistry that it's easy to see that they have my back on the court, and that's easy for me to swing away and really try to use that block.
And you also have plenty of support and advice at home. I understand your mom, Stacy, played at Purdue in the mid-'90s. How much do you rely on her for her support and her advice throughout the course of the year?
So much. She's my biggest fan, and she knows volleyball, which is awesome, and I get to talk to her about even stuff that happened in practice, and she understands, and I think that's just a great support system.
Yeah, it's a killer for me because I did some research and I realized she graduated in 1996, which is the same year that I graduated from college. But that's an me, not an issue, so we'll move on. I understand in your youth you actually liked soccer better than volleyball until your mom maybe convinced you or pushed you towards volleyball. What was that discussion like?
Yeah, I was totally into soccer. I was so into the USA team, and my mom just told me to try something else just because I was starting to grow and taller than everybody else. So she wanted to push me towards volleyball, and I just loved it from the moment I stepped on the court.
At what point in your growth did you realize, as you started to get taller than everybody, that the height could be a big-time advantage in whatever sport you chose?
Not until high school. I mean, I was kind of small until high school, and it just showed as I continued on in my career, and it's just crazy to think that I was once that small and was considered undersized, and just to be able to work around those huge blocks and is just so cool.
I know you get advice from your mom. I'm sure you get plenty of wisdom from Coach Dave Shondell, who's been at this for a long time as well. What's your relationship like with Coach?
Yeah, he is a great supporter on and off the court. I know he truly cares and what every single player on this team does, no matter what they're doing, either volleyball or school or anything. And it's just awesome to have that support on the court and that trust between player and coach.
Yeah, certainly nice to have adults in your corner, but you have to have some folks your own age as well. So which veteran players on this team do you kind of rely on for that advice?
Definitely one of the other outside hitters, Emma Ellis. She has been a role model since I wasn't even at Purdue or thinking about playing college. But also Maddie Skimmerhorn, she's our libero, and she just keeps a calm to the court that we could not play without.
Now, you mentioned before you were even at Purdue and before you committed to Purdue, you had originally committed to Notre Dame. How did that transition happen that eventually landed you in West Lafayette?
Yeah, at Notre Dame, the coach was let go, and that gave me a chance to decommit and reevaluate what I wanted in a college. And Purdue came right in, and they had exactly what I needed. The atmosphere was amazing when I entered the gym, and it was just awesome, and I committed right away.
Yeah, that gym atmosphere is terrific. What's it like to play inside Holloway, especially when you have a big-time opponent on the other side of the net?
At first, very intimidating. I mean, you want to do well for your own team, especially the Boiler Block Party. But in the end, you know they have your back and they're there to cheer you on. So it's just an honor to be able to play in front of all those loyal fans.
You've played well in front of those fans, as we showed at the start of the interview, leading the league in kills per set. As you progress through a match, how aware are you of your kill percentage, or is it more for you just about the quality of each swing you make?
It's more about the quality of each swing I make. Stats, if you think about them, will only get to your head, and that's what I've been told my whole life. So just be able to come in and prove something to everyone that I'm here in this league, and just was probably the reason I have done so well at first. So I think just letting the stats do what they do and being true to myself and my play is what really would get me there.
Now, we've discussed you having to overcome maybe being a little undersized against some of the larger players and some of the other challenges that you face. Let's go to the flip side. Where do you feel like you have the biggest advantage when you go up for a kill or go up for a block?
I would say probably using hands. I know I'm not a big time put the ball down, straight down. I'm more of a hit the hands, use my volleyball IQ. And I think that's what I've been working on, especially with Munciana, my former club, to use and to make that my advantage, especially when size is not in my thing.
All right, so every team in this league is going to go through ups and downs. The league is just that good. For the first time this year, you guys have suffered 3 straight setbacks. So as you get ready to try to bounce back this coming weekend, what's the attitude like in the locker room? What's the conversation like amongst the players?
Yeah, we had a conversation as a team after our 3rd loss, and we just came together. I definitely think we're trying to find our rhythm again, and I think just coming in for practice focused and competing against each other will definitely continue to help our team overcome the next few obstacles, because there will be more in the season, and I think it's just great to see that we're coming together after these 3 losses.
As you do get set to look ahead to the last month and change of the regular season, what sort of goals do you have set out for yourself, whether they be stats specific or whether they be bigger picture goals?
I think at the end of the day, the goal is to win a championship, and I know that's one of my own personal goals, and that's the team goal and the ultimate goal for almost every college team. And just to come into practice and work hard and have that in every rep that we do will, at the end of the day, get the job done.
She is Purdue freshman outside hitter Eva Hudson, leading the Big Ten in kills per set. Eva, we truly appreciate the time. Thanks for being with us today. We wish you the best of luck the rest of the season.
Thank you.
We are back on Big Ten today with a look at the Big Ten West standings. It was the Wild Wild West just a few weeks ago. And there is actually still a scenario, hear me out here, fellas, in which there can be a 7-way tie in the West. Perfect. And Northwestern, you ready for this? At 4-8 overall, could go to Indianapolis as the Big Ten West representative. Now, I do not see that happening. I think that it's fairly unlikely. We all believe that right now Illinois in the driver's seat after Purdue loses to Wisconsin this past weekend. Purdue always loses to Wisconsin. It's been about 20 years since the Boilermakers were able to beat the Badgers. But it doesn't take anything away from what Illinois has done. They have done it basically using the blueprint, Howard, that we expected them to use the run to set up the pass, have a quarterback that doesn't make bad decisions, and play really well on defense. See Brett Bielema at Wisconsin in the late 2000s and early 2010s. It's been the same formula, but it's working perfectly with a different look personnel.
Yeah, they're doing an outstanding job. You talk about a team that's really dialed into what's going on the football field as far as situational football is concerned. Coach Bielema has done a great job of getting these guys prepared, but when you look at what they're able to do offensively, they're relying upon Chase Brown a lot right now, and I think they need to take some of the pressure off there a little bit, because he's an outstanding player, no question about it, but you're going to continue to need him for the stretch, and DeVito's been really outstanding. I think he's really been the difference. You could make an argument that he's probably one of the MVPs of this team. It's hard to say it's not Chase Brown, but when you have a quarterback that's able to make the plays that he's been able to make, it's kind of hard to say, okay, because you still need that guy under center or in the shotgun to be able to make good decisions, and he's been able to do it.
Good news, by the way, for Chase Brown. Brett Bielema saying earlier this week he thinks Josh McCray, one of the backup running backs, has been out for a couple of weeks, should be available to go this week. Last time we saw Chase Brown, he had 43 touches. Yeah. Listen, it's great. He's a workhorse, but that's not sustainable for the course of the rest of the year.
Well, Coach, I might disagree with
That's
you.
two coaches.
Okay.
Two coaches for those counting.
I had LaShawn McCoy and Ricky Williams. Add up their carries. No, but 25-plus carries, for Chase, I don't have a problem with that. I mean, you got to do what you got to do. And the great backs, as Howard was a great back, I'm serious. I mean, the great ones, I've had them all lined up at my front door when I was coaching saying, Coach, I want the ball. Yeah. Why you substitute me out? Give me the rock. Give me the rock. So, I don't see this changing much. It's great to get players back healthy, but
Well, no, he's going to be your bell cow. There's no question about
25
it.
carries.
You got to give him a breather every now and then. He had 41 last time out, or that win over Minnesota, 41 carries, and he caught the ball twice out of the backfield.
You're getting up in my numbers closer.
But, to me, that's how that's where he's really elevated his game, being able to catch the ball out of the backfield. He's had a couple of really nice catches on the wheel route.
Absolutely.
Go in for touchdowns. So he's really done a great job there. I think the wide receivers also have stepped up.
Better than I thought they would be. More than just Isaiah Williams.
Exactly. Those guys have stepped up.
Well, last week's show, we picked the mid-season offensive players. You know who I picked? Tommy DeVito. And my thinking is, and knowing this kid since he was at Don Bosco up in New Jersey, I mean, there's quarterbacks that are game managers, and there's quarterbacks that you're down by a score in the fourth quarter, and they can take the length of the field, make enough decisions, make enough plays to win a game for you. He falls in my mind, this kid falls into that category.
But he can do both. He can manage the game when that's all they need him to do, too.
Yes, absolutely. But if you're defending Illinois right now, put your defensive coordinator's cap on. Yes, the run game. But in the back of your mind, you mentioned the receivers. And with Tommy DeVito, you're saying, guys, we can't be over-aggressive on the run because they could make plays and beat us throwing.
All right, I will put my defensive coordinator cap on. And I've been on this train for basically the bulk of the year. And I know it sounds like I have a man crush on Ryan Walters, but I'm telling you right now, there is not a better young coordinator on either side of the ball in college football than Illinois' DC. The biggest problem Illinois is going to have is keeping him as an assistant coach, because there are going to be a lot of places that want that young man to be a head coach sooner rather than later. And I got to tell you, Howard, I've sat in coaches' meetings with him. I've seen how the players respond to him. His play sheet is this. It is not one of those encyclopedic 100-play books, but he understands what his players can do, and he gets the best out of his players, all three levels, every single play.
So I'm going to tell you this before we get too far down the road. This is what they're doing now to get those little sheets. They're folding it up. They're turning it into this, right? But then there is stuff on every one of those folds. There's a lot of information still out there. But your point is duly taken. He is not only one of the best coordinators out there in college football, and he's due and going to get that opportunity to be a head coach. But he's been so good at Illinois, there are other teams that want him to come coordinate for them. Because you start to look around and like, hey, he's getting this thing done. Well, what happens if all of a sudden he has, call it, a team full of 4- and 5-star guys?
Right.
Then what do you do? But he's got him playing at a really high level. And I think the genius behind Brett Bielema and the reinventing of Brett Bielema is that he's allowing these coaches to really go out and coach.
Yeah.
That is huge.
Absolutely. I got one comment on this blank paper. Just remember this. When you coach defense, clear mind means fast feet. So I'm all
like
in.
that.
Yeah.
I mean, cloudy mind, here, we got 10 pages. Cloudy mind means slow feet.
Yeah.
So remember that. That's a big reason.
Just so everybody out there knows, all of my papers are much more organized and less written on than Wanstead. So clearly,
I am cloudy.
Clearly, I want to have a 100-yard dash for $1 million with the guy sitting to my left. Nebraska's playing much better football than they did early in the year. To me, this is a little bit of a scary game. Illinois is the favorite, and they should be, but I'm a little bit nervous for the Illini in this particular matchup.
Well, let's think about the first loss, first game of the season, and the only loss that Illinois had, right? I mean, against Indiana.
Second game because they played a week 0 game against Wyoming. Yes.
Okay. Against Indiana, first Big Ten game. At the end of the game, they made mistakes. They haven't done it since. So they got to clear it up. But that time off, the time off, that separation, you just hope, because Nebraska, I agree with you. This is a trap game. They've got playmakers from, I think Mark Whipple is an excellent offensive coordinator, to the quarterback. Pitt guy. Anthony Grant can beat you running it. Yeah. They got one of the best receivers in the country, Trey Palmer. So Nebraska's got weapons, and they're 2-2. They're fighting for a bowl game. I mean, there's a lot of
Mickey Joseph's fighting for his job.
Absolutely. There's a lot of motivational factors that can win this game that make it dangerous for Illinois.
And this is where you see if Brett Bielema and that coaching staff are pressing all the right buttons.
Yeah.
Right? Because you want to move. We talk about moving the bar, and I talked about moving the bar on Penn State to see where they were each and every week and where they right mentally and that sort of thing. This is where Illinois, I'm moving the bar on Illinois, because this is a game you've been playing really well, and you got to go on the road, but this is a game you still should win. If you are playing the way you've been playing, This is a game you should win. Nebraska is playing much better, but they have to be able to go out and handle all the praise that they've been hearing for the last couple of
And
weeks.
we're talking about November 19th in Ann Arbor. You can't be talking about that in the locker room. You got to be talking about October 29th in Lincoln.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Because you know players are 18, 19, 20 years old. You know these guys have started to think about Indy. You know they've heard us talking about them going to Indy. You're human.
Absolutely.
I'm thinking about Indy. I'm going either way, but I'm thinking about Indy too.
Yeah, you're thinking about dinner reservations, where it could be on Friday night. You're thinking about different things.
You know how big Howard would be if Illinois is in that Big Ten championship game?
Yeah,
a star from Illinois.
I might be hard to live with for a little
Coach,
bit.
you would be. Oh, the alumni down there, you'll be. You dressed
you want to talk about an Indy VIP? Peyton Manning could be walking down the street next to Howard, and everybody be like, "Hey, who's that guy with Howard Griffith?"
I may drive down just to hang around with Howard.
Oh, all right.